15 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I would look to drop this week. The first guy's Ronald Acuna of the Atlanta Braves. So Acuna, it was another MVP type of season for him, but unfortunately he went down with a torn ACL, and obviously he's out for the season. So all redraft formats, you obviously drop Acuna right now, and he's been dropped already in 32% of fantasy leagues is Acuna. So on the season, like I mentioned, it was a great year for him. 24 homers, 52 RBIs, already 72 runs scored, which is up there in the major league, 17 stolen bases, a 283 batting average, and a 394 on base. So Acuna, he was definitely living up to the first or second pick overall, where he went in many fantasy leagues this season. And it's a big blow. I have Acuna in 2 leagues, and it's just tough, man, that he got hurt like this and you got to drop him. So right now, for Acuna owners, they got to fill in the gaps here. And if you need some waiver wire help, go check out the video of Week 15 hitters to add on waivers. But it's very unfortunate that Acuna went down. And hopefully he recovers in time for next season here, where he'll probably be a top 5 pick once again in fantasy drafts. This guy is once in a generational type of talent, and that's what he was doing again this season. But right now, with the torn ACL, he's a player to drop this week here in Week 15. The second hit is Mike Moustakas of the Cincinnati Reds. So Moustakas, we know he's been injured pretty much the whole season here for the Reds, but right now he's still owned in 52% of fantasy leagues. But reports have come out in the last couple days that he's got heel issues and still a lot of pain he's in. So right now his rehab assignment was scratched, which was happening in mid-June, but right now there's no timetable for Moustakas' return, and with the Reds not really in the hunt to make the playoffs, I think he's not really worth the stash on your injured list, especially if you have other players that have been going on the injured list and will be back in a few weeks. Moustakas, like I mentioned, we don't know when he's coming back, and right now I think he's a drop. But on the season, he was doing pretty decent for 87 at-bats, 4 homers, 13 RBIs, 15 runs scored, a 241 batting average, and a 337 on base. But right now, with the unknown and uncertainty with him, he's an easy drop this week, in my opinion. The next hit is Yasmani Grandal, Chicago White Sox. Grandal, another injured player, and he went surgery for a torn tendon in his left knee, so obviously that doesn't sound good. And right now, who knows how long he's going to be out, is Grandal. In my opinion, he's probably going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, or maybe more, with this tendon. And he really wasn't doing much this season, except showing some power. 14 homers, 38 RBIs, 42 runs scored, but an awful 188 batting average, and a 388 on base. But in the last month before he went down, that average went up, and that on base. On the season, it went in the last month 4 homers, 15 RBIs, 11 runs scored, a 259 batting average, and a 389 on base percentage. So Grandal, he's starting to hit the baseball a little better, but now he went down with the injury here on July 5th, and if that takes us 6 weeks, that'll take you to September, the early part of the playoffs, most likely, in most fantasy leagues, that takes you to. So right now, it's up to the owners, and he's been dropped in 4% of fantasy leagues as Grandal. But like I mentioned, he's got power, but he doesn't have batting average. But obviously, catcher has been a weak position in fantasy baseball for the last 4 or 5 seasons at least here. And right now, Grandal's injured, but I wouldn't stash him on my injured list, especially with the timetable 4 to 6 weeks. That'll take you to late August, probably to early September. And right now, I don't know if most fantasy players want to wait for him, even if they got a bunch of injured lists on their fantasy roster. I look to drop this week's Keston Herrera, the Milwaukee Brewers. So Herrera, he was a big-time prospect a few seasons ago here for the Brewers, and he came up with a bang here with Herrera. But right now, it's been a struggle the last season and a half for him. Maybe this All-Star break will refresh him and get things going. But right now, fantasy owners, they've been fed up with him as well. He's been dropped in 5% of fantasy leagues so far this week. On the season for Herrera, 4 homers, 18 RBIs, 16 runs scored, an awful 168 batting average, and a 262 on base. In the last couple weeks haven't really been any better. No homers, 4 RBIs, a stolen base, 2 runs scored, a 206 batting average, and a 325 on base. So right here, he got sent down to the minor leagues for about 3 weeks early in the season. And right now, this might just be who he is, Herrera. We've seen it the last 2 seasons with him, like I mentioned, decent power numbers, but low batting average. And this season, he's not even bringing the power. At least last year, 13 home runs with a 212 average. So right here, it's been a weird year. The Brewers are in first, but they're two better hitters coming into the season. Yelich and Herrera haven't done nothing. Guys like Adames, Seville Garcia, and obviously Luis Urias have been carrying this team here. But right now, the last few games for Herrera, July 5th at the Mets 0-4 with 4 Ks, July 7th at the Mets 0-2, July 8th versus Cincinnati 2-4 with an RBI, July 9th versus Cincinnati 1-2, and July 10th versus Cincy 0-2, and July 11th versus Cincy 0-2. So right now, he's not hitting the baseball. He's only got 3 hits here, Herrera, since July 3rd, and there's no reason to keep him on your fantasy roster because I know people are hoping he's going to turn things around and do what he did a few seasons ago, but that's not going to happen. So right now, he's an easy drop this week in the 5th and final hitter. I would look to drop this week's Miles Straw of the Houston Astros. So Straw, he was a hot pickup a few weeks ago on the waiver wire, but right now his numbers have dropped down over the last few weeks on the season for Straw. 2 homers, 28 RBIs, 13 stolen bases, 40 runs scored, a 266 batting average, and a 347 on base. But the last couple weeks, his numbers have died down. No homers, an RBI, a stolen base, 6 runs scored, 226 batting average, and a 333 on base for Straw. I know Straw, he was banged up a little as well with a little bit of injury for a few days here and there. But he was hitting the ball well, but the Astros, they should get some reinforcement soon coming back from the injured list with obviously Alvarez and Bregman coming back hopefully soon for them. So Straw definitely wouldn't have any value. And while he's in a slump as well, I think there's better options on the wire. The last few games here for Straw, July 6th versus Oakland, 2-3 with a run and a rib. July 7th versus Oakland, 1-3 with a run. July 8th, he sat that ball game out. July 9th versus the Yankees, 0-4. July 10th versus the Yankees, 0-3. And July 11th versus the Yankees, 0-0 in a pinch hit. But he did score a run in that one. But right now, Straw's not getting it done. Like I mentioned, the reinforcements are coming for Houston. And he had a good couple week run, but I think it's time to put him back on the waiver wire and drop Straw this week. So that's a few hitters I look to drop here in week 15 of the fantasy baseball season.